Hello there! Professor Don here with another EXP share for you. This time it's for the recently released Fire Emblem Fates. I've always intended EXP share for more games beyond Smash Bros, and being the Fire Emblem fan that I am, it's natural that I'd share some tactics that I use and you may not know about. Let's get down to business to defeat that Hans. Did they send me waifus when I asked for dons? Here's tip number 1. New to the Fire Emblem series is the ability to pair up during setup, which can save you a lot of time micromanaging several units every time you have to replay a difficult chapter. By extension, pairing up a unit with low movement like Effie with a mounted unit like Elise can take her to places she probably wouldn't get in time just on her own. I had Effie single-handedly block off the right side of the map in the notoriously hard Conquest Chapter 10 using this tactic. Tip number 2. With the changes to the weapon system in Fire Emblem Fates, each type of weapon has a unique effect. Pay attention to the descriptions of each of the weapons, as some can reduce your speed effectively by 5, or even prevent you from attacking twice completely. Keep in mind, a unit can attack twice if their speed is 5 points higher than the opposing unit, so if you're lowering your speed by 5, you're making it easier for enemies to attack you twice. Some other examples include bronze weapons offering plus 10 dodge and higher accuracy at the cost of lower damage and preventing you from activating skills or critical hits. You'll want to have your units carry more than one kind of weapon so you can cycle through them and weigh your options. And while we're on the subject of talking about the weapon system, let's take a brief moment to talk about the weapons triangle. You know, that thing that works like rock, paper, scissors. The weapons triangle isn't new to the series, but there have been some changes. Magic, bows, and the brand new concealed weapons are grouped with swords, axes, and lances respectively. Each group essentially has a ranged equivalent now. What you might not have noticed is that each group is represented by a color. In the icon of a weapon, you'll see that it has a color that it represents, and at the bottom of the icon is a sliver of the color that the weapon beats. If you don't know what weapon counts as what, you can simply look at those colors. I should mention that the colors in the icon aren't reflected accurately for reverse weapons. Stuff like the dual katana still has the green line at the bottom of the icon, but they actually best the lance type weapons. Tip number 3. After using up one of your unit's turns, you can use another unit to equip a different weapon to them by using trade and rearranging their unequipped weapon to the top. For example, after attacking with the Yato using your avatar unit, it may be a good idea to have someone else equip the Dragonstone afterwards so you can get that defense bonus from having it equipped. Okay, this next tip is going to be a doozy. Tip number 4. The way the pair-up mechanics work now involve a lot of risk, which adds more complexity to strategy than Fire Emblem Awakening. The risk is compounded by the fact that enemies can now take advantage of those same mechanics as well. In Fire Emblem Awakening, pairing up gave you a boost in stats, allowed the backup unit to add extra damage to attacks through dual attacking, or completely negated taking damage through dual guarding. Dual attacks and dual guarding happens mostly by chance. Oftentimes there was very little reason to not be paired up. In Fire Emblem Fates, those mechanics have essentially been separated. Dual attacks are only performed if the unit attacking is not paired up. At the same time, being unpaired leaves you vulnerable to dual attacks from enemies. When choosing a weapon to attack the enemy with, you can also cycle between your adjacent units by pressing R. It's important to pay close attention here because the backup attacker is typically prioritized by the one that has the highest support level with the lead unit. But you may end up doing more damage or having more accuracy with someone else that's next to you. Being paired up gives the lead unit a boost of stats and will always negate the attack from the opposing backline. In order to dual guard, there is now a meter that builds when you or your enemy attacks. Once that meter is full, the next time your paired up unit receives an attack, they will take no damage from a single hit. However, if you remain idle without attacking or being attacked for too many turns, the meter will begin to deplete on its own. Pairing up your units is designed to be your defensive option, but the way Dual Guard works can also reward you for being offensive, especially with units that have the Astra skill, or high speed for attacking twice. One of the drawbacks of being paired up is potentially not doing as much damage as you would be doing if you weren't paired up and you were attacking the same enemy individually while still taking advantage of dual attacks. There isn't one mechanic that is completely outright better than the other, and you'll be using them interchangeably. Keep in mind, if you just have a unit that's paired up all the time, you limit their EXP growth and their potential supports with other characters, which also might be a good thing. Woo! Tip number 5. While I can't 100% confirm this, enemy AI does not seem to factor in the dual guard meter. Knowing this quirk makes it easy to bait enemies. As an example, I had 2 units that would potentially die if attacked if it wasn't for the weaker one having dual guard built up. One unit was my avatar. If I died, it's game over. The other unit was a Wyvern Rider, Baruka, paired up with Arthur. They had less than 10 HP each, and the enemy was a lone archer who had 30 plus attack. Of course, bows do bonus damage to flying units. So, assuming the AI calculated how to do the most damage, despite potentially ruining the run of my chapter, it decided to attack into Baruka, the flying Wyvern Rider, who had dual guard built up, thus negating any deadly blow. Knowing when to have dual guard built up can be pivotal. To quote Sun Tzu in The Art of War,
"The opportunity to secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself." Now, tip number 6.
Mozu is the magic harp kind of character in this game. She starts off incredibly weak, but thanks to her stat growth rates, plus her skill aptitude, she can become a pretty strong character over time. If you're having trouble leveling her up, you can use concealed weapons to debuff enemies to make it easier for her to do damage. Have stronger units stand adjacent to Mozu so she can have her backup finish them off while taking most of the experience points for herself. You can also use Silas's skill, Shelter, to rescue Mozu after attacking with her, so she isn't vulnerable to attacks during the enemy phase. You may also want to pair her up with characters that increase her strength or defense stats, such as Rinka, Arthur, or Effie. When I originally wrote this tip, I was only about halfway into the game. However, towards the late game, I haven't found Mozu to be as much of a bulldozer as Donnell was, or the trainees from Sacred Stones. I believe this is because her standard promotions are not bad, but not great, and the villager class in Fates counts as a first tier class instead of how it was before, where you can get to level 30 and then hit the first tier. So I'd like to amend my tip and say Mozu isn't really worth the trouble. She does make a great mother though, so also you could use this tip in general for weaker characters that you want to level up. Tip number 7. Unlike in Awakening, you cannot use a second seal to reset your level back to level 1. That means you can't just infinitely level up to eventually cap out your stats. If you want to get the most chances for potential stat gains, you ideally should level up your character to the level cap of 20 with their base class before promoting. This is pretty much the same thinking that was ideal for games before Awakening. It's worth noting that you can purchase the Eternal Seal to be able to raise your level cap by 5 levels, but it's really expensive and you likely won't have enough to buy it for more than a couple characters, especially without abusing the DLC. For tip number 8, don't be afraid to buy and use tonics, especially if you're playing on hard difficulty. For only 150 gold, you can have 5 more HP. I've been playing Conquest on hard, and there have been times where I needed to min-max an attack in the first turn to survive a hit by 1 HP. HP tonics are probably the most cost-effective one as the other stat boosters only give you +2, aside from luck, which gives you +4.
Sun Tzu advised, "He who wishes to fight must first count the cost."
As for tip number 9, sometimes it's better not to kill your enemy. During the enemy phase, I've had instances where my run of a chapter took a departure going south as one of my units killed an enemy that attacked him thanks to a critical hit. Since the enemy that died no longer occupies the tile of space next to that unit, another enemy was able to come along and murder the unit I should have been praising for that lucky strike. Going back to one of my previous tips, this led me to have my unit equip a bronze weapon so that a random chance of landing a critical hit was totally avoided. One of Sun Tzu's essential principles to victory claimed, "He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight." And now for tip number 10. Learn how to do simple math with your unit stats. Calculating the difference between your HP combined with your defense or res from the enemy's attack can save yourself some potential grief when you're baiting enemies into attacking you. You won't always be in range to walk up next to the enemy to attack them and have the game calculate it for you, but they will be in range to attack you. This is pretty essential for playing on harder difficulties. Sun Tzu once said, "Victorious warriors win first, and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, and then seek to win." That's it for now. Like last time, feel free to ask me any questions. And assuming that you have the game because you're here, your homework for today is to come visit me and my wife's castles. My castle ID will be in the description below. Leave your castle IDs in the comments and we'll give your castle a visit. And before I end this session, I want to give a quick shout out to my good friend Phil. He helped me seem like I actually went to school for this.
Now, I leave you with one last quote from Sun Tzu. To achieve victory, one must subscribe, like, share, and comment on this video.